Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
Hi, this is Zoe Routh, and I'm very thrilled to bring you Alisa Moss, who is Director of Canberra design firm DJAS, or DJAS, but I like DJAS, sounds way more exciting. And she is a passionate contributor and expert in workplace design, where a lot of their work has been focused over the last, how many years have you been in Canberra now?
Just over 30.
30 years, okay. And the projects they work on, from design to architectural development, have been in the hundreds of square meters up to 85,000 square meters, so full buildings. She is a strong advocate for improving indoor environment quality and environmental sustainable design. She's won some amazing prestigious awards like the A.V. Jennings Churchill Fellowship and another second international fellowship in 2009 with the ISS Institute. She is really a specialist in helping private and government organizations deal with culture change and through that, how they set up their workplace design. So welcome, Alisa.
Thank you.
So first a personal one. How did you actually get into interior design?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I was a photographer and then I worked in film. I was a set designer. And I was talking to a friend who said, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And she said, well, you like shopping. Why don't you become an interior designer? Which was actually an interior decorator. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And I went for it. And then it's history.
That's amazing. So you have a real sense of the aesthetic.
Yes, I've always enjoyed that part. So very creative.
Yeah, fantastic. And now your work is really about designing workspaces that work for people in the workplace. So one of the key things I'm interested in, and I know that a lot of our listeners are, is poor workplace design. It's when you go into some places, as you probably have this experience too, and you just get a sense of like, ugh, how do people work in here? It's old, it's decaying, you can see that it doesn't have a good flow. What are your experiences when talking to clients about poor workplace design and what is it costing them?
So I think one of the main things with workplace design is it's being completely redefined. So workplace design used to be a strong hierarchy where you used to see sort of, the top organisations, big offices, EAs associated with them, and that's completely shifted. And I think the concept of a talent war is very valid for private as well as government organisations.
So you mean that people are more interested, like working in a nice place is one of the contributing factors of where talent goes?
Well, walking in and evaluating the office culture and the office aesthetics, I think, are very important when it comes to trying to create and try to attract the right people. And so when you look at the way that most organisations spend money, they'll always spend money front of house and then also where it impacts the staff as well are the two biggest things. One really interesting study was a group called Synergy, who are Canberra-based accountants, and they work purely for the government. And this is one organisation that really resonated that whole thing of talent retention. And so when I started working with them, and this was in 2015, I think they had approximately 90 employees. When I finished working with them, they had 150 employees, but still their area was still very modest. When I was speaking to the partners, the whole conversation was how do we get the best people? And because they were growing so quickly, they really needed to get some really good people behind them at all times. And so their workplace was completely geared up to create a really good environment for clients who walk in the door, as well as their staff, to the point of having the nice gimmicks of swings and alike, all the way through to bragging walls and the branding. So we worked with.
What's a bragging wall?
Where you can write up achievements. So it's cool. Taking that essence of in movies where you see sort of the bell ringing when someone achieves something really good, the same sort of concept where you can go and write up an achievement, and at the end of the year, the whole team get together, they work out what the main achievements were, and then it becomes permanent on the bragging wall.
Hey, that's awesome.
It is a good idea.
So tell me, like, I'm interested in this idea of gimmicks, you know, like this swing and, you know, fake grass and stuff like that. So you say some clients invest in that as well as some other cultural pieces. What kind of gimmicks, why gimmicks, and do they work?
So that's a tricky one. So gimmicks work in some scenarios and not always. So workplace design, we know that there's more introverts than extroverts. Designers are normally extroverts. And so when designers walk in, it used to be, and I think Google is fantastic, YouTube is fantastic, but if you look at their model, it was really over the top, where it was collaboration here, brainstorming here, and alike, where if you actually look at a workspace, there is more introverts than extroverts. And often the really smart people go and talk to a group of people, then they need to reflect on what had been said in that discussion and teamwork environment. They work out the solutions and then they come back and report back to the group, and then the conversation keeps on going from there. So gimmicks work because it helps with branding, but they're not always successful as well. So you still have to design in a very considered way.
Okay, and considered way means taking into effect that you need those quiet concentration places as well as the collaboration places.
You do. So typically support spaces are becoming more and more the trend, and it's one of the lovely statistics that I quite like is providing a landscape of different working opportunities and support spaces. So that's everything from collaboration to focus rooms to library spaces to status quo working environments. Often increases productivity by about 37%, and that's purely allowing people to be able to go and do the task and sit in a work setting that is associated to that task as well. So if you need to focus, you go and focus. You don't sit in a big open floor plan. If you need that creativity or the brainstorming or the interaction to solve a problem, then you would make sure that you were sitting in that environment. If it was just status quo, admin, process and respond, emails and alike, you would often just sit in an environment where you're surrounded by people.
So is this the activity-based working concept, or is this something?
Yeah, so this is so activity-based working, I think, or ABW is probably the biggest trend. Mind you, a couple of years ago, ABW was out and the living room office was in, which is basically still ABW, but it's got more of a home environment. And that's really, I think, responding to the very grey lines that we're all creating now between work-life balance and when we work. So having an environment, quite often the younger generation in particular are looking for environments that are quite comfortable because their working hours have become quite grey.
So let me just check that I've understood this correctly. So activity-based working station, we had these compartmentalized areas, if you like. So kind of like landscaping, but for your office, where you have, one area of the office garden is thinking, one area is collaboration, and so on. That's a little bit more of an in-trend thing is the living room office, so that's making work feel more like home.
Yes.
So is that still currently on trend, that one?
It's becoming more on trend. So you can often see that with the furnishing. So the furnishing is becoming more home-like, more comfortable. The different seating arrangements are often becoming more homely and more comfortable. And then the introduction of, the fireplace type of pit. That's often not a fireplace, but mind you, there are fireplaces coming into offices now as well.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite nice actually. Our Melbourne studio did a really nice one for, I can't think of what it was actually. I think it's a university, and we had a fireplace, and it was well received. I tried to get one in a couple of weeks ago, and it was declined. But anyway, I'll keep on trying.
And again, this is a place where people can go and do work as well as social. Or
social,
both?
Yeah. So I think that the grey line between work and social is also really, really sort of becoming more grey. One of the things that I find really fascinating with workplace and what's happening in workplace is the teams are often getting smaller that can deliver the same amount of work. And so team base and that opportunity or the essence of tribes are coming quite strong as well. And so it's having that ability to be able to get smaller groups of people together. So ABW is a landscape of different working opportunities. It can be, you often might hear it being zoned or neighbourhooded, which means that potentially you stay as a team. The family table is becoming quite common. So if you work within a team, you've got a family table, so similar to a big dining table that you can always go back to and you can find your team members. Most workplaces are becoming smaller clusters of different working opportunities which reflect smaller groups, which therefore reflect smaller tribes.
Okay. And that's where does the solo worker work within that? So do you have a lot of people who are just doing their own thing, or is it really becoming more these little small pods of people doing stuff?
Solo work, I think this is just my personal opinion, I think humans, we're not solo individuals. So even though if we do a solo task, we still like to have that communication. Working from home or flexible working models, I think, are becoming more in play. So if you needed to work in a really solo environment, then you would choose where you work, and that could be potentially from home. And then likewise, the concept of a co-working hub is becoming more and more common, where you've got a lot of solo workers or individual workers that still want to do their own task individually, but still want to be as a collective group.
That's for company, isn't it? I guess, and also to leverage the office space environment, because not everybody works effectively from their home environment. True. That's for sure.
True.
I find I've had a couple of days when I've been traveling where I've spent at a co-working space, and it's nice to be around a bit of a buzz again, because when you're a solo operator, like I have an office at home, and you can get quite lost in your own thinking. Sometimes it's nice to have other humans wandering around on those days where you're doing office-based work.
Absolutely.
Okay, so workplaces are based on 3 typical requirements. You've told me this before. So these are, you say, people and work, places, and tools. So when you're doing workplace design, and you're talking about tools in particular, what kinds of things are you considering when you're considering tools?
So tools are really the element that you need to be able to do your tasks. So it's either IT connectivity, so either brainstorming walls, short throw projectors where you can collaborate on your devices onto a wall and not necessarily need to be in the same office to do so. They're becoming more and more in trend. And then likewise for furnishing. So you'll note that there's a lot of different... The concept of just a table and a chair, a task chair and a table is on its way out. And then a lot of furnishing is also the tools that you need. So be able to read a report sitting in one of the high back lounges that have got a nice acoustic insulation to them, so you can sit there and you can focus but still be part of an environment. If you're an older... we're all working now until we're 70, so
at least.
At least.
My dad's 74 and he's still going strong. Amazing.
So a chair that suits a 20-year-old to a 65 to 70-year-old is also completely different. And so it's making sure that you've got what you need to be able to do your task. And that's where workspace is getting responded, and that's where designers and clients are needing to respond consistently to designing for a 20-year-old to a 60-year-old. There's 2 major spectrums, and it's everything from furniture to lighting. Our lighting levels and what we need from our lighting levels differ considerably, and likewise for acoustics. And I think acoustics is one of the main bugbears in a lot of environments, and having a nice acoustic treatment within the open office plan and enclosed rooms is really important.
What does that mean, a nice acoustic treatment?
Dying down the sound, so it's not an echoing voice that runs through, or you feel like you're in an empty void. That whole sense of a comfort, I think, is always very important. I imagine some of us have been in meeting rooms where you talk and your voice just echoes around, and you feel, it makes you feel instantly uncomfortable, and you don't know why. But it does. And likewise, when you're in an open floor plan and you can hear the conversation from 4 or 5 workstation pods away, and it's the way that the noise travels through the working environment.
So those open-placed workstations, how do you deal with them? Like, how do you what do they look like nowadays?
So for us at DJAS, one of our main design philosophies is breaking the horizon line. And so making sure when you walk in, you don't walk into a sea of workstations or a sea of people. There's two main reasonings behind that. One is for human comfort. I don't think any of us like to, especially if we don't have allocated seats, walking into a sea of spaces and feeling overwhelmed. So the more you limit those horizon lines, often the more comfortable it is. It also then helps with acoustics as well.
Yeah, right. And so many offices have that. It's like a sea of cubicles.
Yes, and we do our best to avoid that. And that could be dropping a green wall down, for example.
What's a green wall?
A plant wall, for example, acoustic panels, storage. There's plenty of ways that you can break it up.
Okay. So that open place plan, like that, there was a move to get out of offices and then go into open office plan, and now we want to sort of do a hybrid of that a little bit, so having sort of working pods or areas and so on. Have I got the trend on right?
Yes, so there's a lot. So offices are on their way out, and I think that's really obvious. But the ability to meet is still really important. So if you do a lot of studies, and often you find that usually an office environment has one-to-one desk for a meeting versus a workstation, for example. And quite often you'll find at least a third of the open work plan won't be sitting at their desk, and they'll often be either out on site, they'll be in a meeting, they'll be in the breakout area, but they won't be sitting in their seat. And so offices are getting reduced, but the landscape of working opportunities or the amenities are getting increased. So the ability to be able to meet in different ways is getting increased, where offices are getting reduced. And so it's all sort of evening out. You might need to edit that one.
No, that's all right. It's all getting evened out.
Even out. But I think one of the main trends that we've seen in sort of the last 30 years, and because working in Canberra, a lot of us work for government, is the trend of watching the different levels of the middle to lower to mid to higher management leaving offices.
They haven't quite abandoned the office space for the directors kind of thing. They're still hanging on to that little piece of status. And there's sometimes good reason for that in terms of they need a private meeting space, but I think you've solved it beautifully in terms of given them priority access to those meeting places and so on. And the reality is, as you said, the technology really drives a different kind of work. Like, we can't just pick things up and move around. And I don't know about you, but I've taken calls in my car, I've written newsletters on the plane. We can do work from wherever, and it just allows us to maximize how we get about our life and work in a much more flexible way. So we don't need to be chained to the desk every day, day in, day out. Awesome. So let's talk about, what are some key design principles? So we've talked generically about what are the trends, what's been happening in office places. Not everybody has a squillion dollar budget to build an entirely new state-of-the-art building. What can we do if we are looking at our workspace? So we're even small workplaces of, let's say, 10 people. What are the key things that we could consider doing to make the place better from a design point of view?
So one of our main philosophies is, I think the workplace design should be really seen as a kit of parts or a tool set. And so it is really about the individuals that I think will make the biggest thing. Designing for 10 people to designing to a couple of hundred people or a couple of thousand is very, very uniquely different. So for a 10-person team, you would really see it being a big team environment. You would see them all working together. For 10 people, you would very rarely see one individual in an office, for example. You would really hone into that sort of family table where you come together and you share ideas. A 10-person team is usually very dynamic. When we move up to the larger ones, that sense of culture or community is also really important. I think I love the statistic that we spend, is it 92 or 94% of our lives indoors being in...
What?
Yes.
94% of our life
indoors, which includes cars as well, in transit. But it just once again reinforces that sort of having an opportunity where you feel comfortable. You spend more time at work than you do with your loved ones typically. So culture and community, I think, are one of the main things. One of our main philosophies also at DJAS is we strongly believe that you can ask people to walk to community, so walk to a really large breakout community where kitchens, that whole essence of a family kitchen, a family table, is really, really important to break down the barriers and to break down the sort of the silo teams that are often created. But you can't ask people to walk for water. And so water stations. So you can ask people to walk half a floor or a whole floor plate away for a big community hub, but you can't ask them to walk for water or a cup of tea. So quite often you see
you can't go up a level to get a cup of tea.
You can't.
Right. Okay.
You can't, or particularly water. So now you'll see a current trend and you'll hear sort of the buzzwords of, brew points or water stations. There's a lot of sort of buzzwords happening around these main elements. But you have water stations scattered throughout a floor plate, but then one usually really big central hub that would suit a whole floor or potentially a whole building, depending on how big your organisation is. The idea also of vertical stairs. So once again, it's designing for your spine, getting people up and moving. Most of us would have elements like follow me print when it comes to photocopiers, reducing
What does that mean? Follow me print.
Follow me print means that you don't press print and it prints. So you don't press print from your workstation and then paper pops out of a photocopy machine. You actually have to walk over to it and say, okay, I'm ready for you to print. So therefore it shows that it has reduced the amount of waste in paper, and it's also encouraging people to get up, and people are thinking twice before they print, not get up and go.
Seriously? I have to walk 10 meters. I'm like, do I really have to walk 10 meters?
So the other really big thing is getting people to move, and once again breaking down those teams. So if you do work in an office environment that is over potentially a couple of floors, one of the other really lovely design philosophies is that essence of a vertical village, where you've got circulation stairs. In new buildings, you'll often find that the designers are punching big holes through the slabs and putting those stairs in.
You mean circulation stairs? Do you mean spiral stairs or
just any sort of stair? So it's that concept of asking people to move vertically through stairs versus lifts. So once again, you're meeting people and you're reinforcing that sense of culture and community. So that's really I think the defining thing is really to have, if you've got a strong culture and a strong community in your workspace, then you'll often find that your staff are more committed. And so it's providing the kit of parts that suits your team and what you do, which differs from, accountants to lawyers to marketing agencies, for example, two different styles that you would be adopting. I don't think there's not a system that fits all. I think it's really responding, but it is responding to that need of having a workspace that people can come together as a team, but also to be able to focus as well. And because we do have more introverts than extroverts in a workspace, to have that ability where people can withdraw or come together and give individuals that choice of what they need for that moment or that day or that task.
Right, so if I'm getting your design philosophy or methodology, it's really looking at the organisation, its purpose, the kinds of work that needs to happen, and then designing workspace that supports that, as well as fostering that sense of community and belonging. So in some ways, because you just talk about having strong culture, the design of the environment can actually foster strong culture as a result. Is that what you believe?
It can, and it can also hinder it as well.
Oh, tell me about the workplace design that hinders culture.
Well, it depends. So once again, it depends on the organisation. We're finding through the studies that have been undertaken in workplace design that methodology of trust is a big thing, and trust is often associated with management. So are the management available? So that concept of having the management wing or the executive wing, we're finding is hindering workplace culture. not having access to sort of strong amenities is often hindering workplace culture.
What do you mean by strong amenities?
So, bringing it back to T points again. So typically, originally there were T points often associated with buildings within the core. So there were very tiny little T points where you couldn't actually come together. So you would often go and make lunch, have a cup of tea, and then you would walk back to your desk and you would eat lunch at your desk by yourself. Where if you have those sort of strong amenities, it really encourages the team once again to come together, to share a meal, share a laugh, connect as a group, and then go back and do their working tasks.
So what you're saying is that tea and biscuits really drives culture.
It does. We do office morning tea every day in our office.
Every day
at 10:30, and I have to say I'm very proud of our workplace culture, and I think it really is based on, because we feel like we're a tribe and we feel like we're a bit of a community as well, and we've got not one single enclosed room in our whole office. So we don't have the traditional boardroom, we don't have any enclosed room at all.
More to the point, though, what are you eating every day for tea?
So we are eating fruit now.
Oh God, your waistlines.
We are eating fruit, yes. So tea, coffee, fruit, and there are some biscuits still.
Some healthy stuff.
Yeah, there is some healthy stuff.
And does the organisation provide that? Does the firm provide that?
They do.
Yeah, right. Okay, and everybody's tools down at 10:30?
More often than not, yes.
Yeah,
and then any ex-DJAS people or anyone that knows the DJAS culture pop in at 10:30 as well.
So I know where to go. I can get free tea and cookies next time.
Exactly. Kingston.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so we need to talk about standing desks, walking desks, cycling desks, reclining desks.
Yes.
What's going on in those trends?
So look, so I think we've all heard that the saying, sitting is the new smoking. So that's very in trend. Sit-to-stand desks are becoming more the norm, and the main reasoning for that, really, when it comes to a new fit-out, is the cost difference between a static height desk and a sit-to-stand has almost evened out. So a sit-to-stand desk is becoming more in trend. We did actually have one fit-out that we had the walking desk. I don't think that was incredibly ergonomic, but I think the main takeaway is that you don't necessarily need a sit-to-stand desk, but you need the ability to either sit or stand. And so I think from memory, it takes 40 minutes to move into a complete focused work model, and you only can sustain that for a period of, I think it's around 20 minutes. And then through those windows of opportunities is when you're meant to be standing. Also, the classic 3 o'clock slum, for example, is another really good opportunity to stand. We also know standing all day is more damaging than sitting all day, but it's the essence of getting up and moving is the biggest thing. So the furniture is reflecting the ability for us to improve our health, which is moving and not sitting in a static environment day in, day out.
Sitting or standing in a static environment. So it's more about up, down, moving around.
Moving, absolutely.
Go get your tea, get your printing.
Exactly. So walk for your printing, walk for your your breakout area. So walk for those big elements, and I think it does overall help. The communication stairs, so the circulation stairs. Once again, it's that reinforcement of getting people to walk, and so we all probably are finding that we are moving more. We don't need to be so stagnant in our tasks. And if you listen to your body, you're actually it asks you to move as well. And there's obviously more and more gimmicks happening. So technology is obviously really shifting the way that we work. And workstations now can respond to an individual by an app on their phone. So if I was walking towards a desk, it would respond that I'm walking towards it, and it would suddenly shift to suit my ergonomic height.
What?
And then you could train it to sort of say, okay, well, in periods where we know that we naturally work in a slum, so around sort of the after lunch 3 o'clock, it will automatically lift to a standing height for you.
So you're in the middle of something, goes standing
time.
Yeah, right.
So furniture is becoming more and more responsive to actually help us. There is a chair that I haven't seen yet, but apparently will slightly move or vibrate if you're not sitting in an ergonomic way as well. So it will constantly readjust you to be sitting in a correct posture.
Does it have a cattle prod in it too?
Probably.
Pay attention, get on with your task.
Not working enough.
Oh my God, I'm not sure if that's a useful thing or not, where we're outsourcing self-management to tools. But then again, we see that a lot in the self-quantification field, where people have these smartwatches and it monitors everything, your sleep patterns, this, and it gives useful feedback. So I like that. So smart desks and smart chairs that you can plan to get you into good behavior. I would imagine after a while you would start to do that automatically.
Yes.
After you've been cattle prodded. After your phone's told you to get off your butt and move.
One would assume. But even that concept of big data is coming more and more into workplace. So you can monitor how a workplace performs. You can tell where someone is in a building at any one time. You can tell if they are sitting within a quiet zone, so they don't want to be disturbed. If they're sitting within a collaborative zone, they want to be disturbed. You can tell how many people are using meeting rooms. So the whole idea of these beacons which judge and measure a workplace is becoming more in trend as well. So
why would they have those? Just to see if their workplace design is actually supporting productivity?
Absolutely, yes, and then change it accordingly. So once again, workplace design is just a tool set or a set of techniques that you can use, but you need to be able to alter it to suit individuals of what they need and what they want.
Yeah, right, okay, last question. What are your tips for workplace design on a budget?
Well, I'm not very good at designing to a budget. So
it's so much better if you don't have a budget. You can just spend as much as you want.
Absolutely. Look, for me, less is more. I'm conscious, as you said earlier, that I've done a number of sustainability and environmental fellowships. And if you look at the construction industry, the workplace design is one of those things that is quite costly to landfill, especially if we churn out our workstations every 10 years. Where do they go? They all, all of our pretty elements all hit landfill. So I always like the idea of refurbishing and reusing as you can. I think that the idea of investing into good furniture is also really important. So things that hold strong warranties, that can support sort of a 10-year lifespan, if not more. And if you look at sort of the big organisations, the Wilcons, the Herman Millers, the Steelcases, all the big international brands when it comes to furniture, they've often got a lifetime warranty on a lot of their items, which is really worthwhile supporting. And allowing for change in technology. So we know that technology is continuously shifting. So making sure that we've got flexibility built into our workplaces. So making sure that you've got the ability to move. So don't design to accommodate every square metre. Make sure that you've got some sort of movement. The other really big philosophy, I think, is the idea to move people. So every time you pull down a wall or build a new wall, it's costing the environment and then costing the clients or the main stakeholders physical dollars. So the idea to make sure you've got enough flexibility to be able to move people, then move environment. So you can repurpose rooms very easily, but it's good to not constantly bring things up and down.
Yeah, right. Some of the things that you mentioned, which I think are really valuable also, is that idea of breaking up the horizon so that you don't get into this big sort of open
Absolutely.
wash of same grayness. I think that was a really useful tip. And then trying to, in smaller teams, talking about that kitchen table or the family table, I think that was a really useful tip. That's a pretty easy one for folks to implement depending on what's happening in their workspaces.
Absolutely, and a really nice one. So there's a point that you know that if you ever go to an environment that you'll meet your team and you can touch base, you can collaborate, and then you can go back and find the working opportunity that you need for that task or that day.
Yeah, I like that. So, Alisa, thank you so much for chatting to us about workplace design and the wonderful innovations that are happening out there. The cattle prod chair is perhaps my favorite. And for those of you listening, you can come along to the Edge of Leadership on the 23rd of March here in Canberra, because Alisa will be there as one of the experts during the open space component, where you can come and sit with her and listen to insights and wisdom and ask her questions about your specific workplace situation, and she can give you all sorts of ins and outs and advice, and talk to other leaders as well who have got their expertise and experience with workplace design. So thanks a lot, Alisa.
My pleasure.